Kuzu Zangpo, and welcome to Let's Talk Green. I'm Sonam Rinchen. Environmental clearance has become an issue. There have been a lot of concerns raised from different sections of the society regarding the clearance. What is environmental clearance and why is it required? To discuss more on this, I'm now joined by officials from the National Environment Commission Secretariat. Thank you so much for joining us in this program. And to begin with, Kunjang sir, what is environment clearance and who all need the clearance?
Following the enactment of the Act, the National Environment Commission adopted the regulation.
Yes.
So, it is the requirement under this Act and the regulation to obtain environment clearance for any kind of developmental activities.
Yes.
So, now to come back to your question, what is environment clearance? Going by the definition of the Act, environment clearance is a written decision issued by the National Environment Commission Secretariat or the competent authorities to proceed the project with the terms and conditions to ensure that the activity or the project is managed in an environmentally sound and sustainable manner.
Yes.
So, to further elaborate on this, the definition of the environmental clearance, it is basically an kind of a decision from the authority like NEC and the competent authority for a developmental activity, so that the developmental activity is managed in a way that doesn't impact the environment and the health of the by the activity to the general public. And now coming to the second question, who all need the environment clearance? So, in other way, it is not who all need environment clearance. What I understand is what kind of projects are subjected to environment clearance. So, as I said earlier, any activity or project which may have significant impact on the environment will require environment clearance. But as per the regulation 2002, there are some activities which are exempted. Those exempted list are basically those activities which have a lesser impact on environment or which doesn't have an impact. So, basically environment clearance is required for any activity that may have the impact on environment. Thank you.
Ma'am Sringla, if you could highlight some of the process required for obtaining the environment clearance.
The process mainly for obtaining an environmental clearance is guided by the Environment Assessment Act and its regulation. And to facilitate an applicant on how to go about an application, we have also issued sectoral guidelines.
Yes.
So mainly it's categorized into industries, hydropower, and highways and power transmission lines, and etc. And also to help guide the applicants, we have also issued initial environmental examination forms that is also for different categories, like I've mentioned before, like industries and all. The actual process, as I've told you, is guided by the EA Act and its regulation. So firstly, the applicant begins to prepare an application by filling out an initial environmental examination form. So there, once they're filling out, they will get a picture of who is actually affected by the project.
Yes.
So they will have a list of stakeholders that they need to consult or get an official no objection certificates from. So these, what we call the stakeholder clearances, are required to be submitted by the applicant during submission of the application la. And also we have a requirement to fulfill the public consultation la. So the applicant will have to consult the public and give proper documentation of the consultations la. So once that is submitted to either a competent authority that is designated by the NEC la, National Commission la, National Environment Commission, the competent authorities, as per the delegated activities la, so they will either issue an environmental clearance or reject an environmental clearance. So they will make a decision on the proposal if it is a delegated activity. If not, they will forward the application to the National Environment Commission Secretariat la. At the Secretariat, we review their IEE form, which is the Initial Environmental Examination forms, and make an assessment and do the routine site visits and all. And after that, if it is found that the impact is quite significant, and the proponent is then asked to carry out an EIA study. Yes. If there is no significant impact, the decision is made whether to issue or whether to issue the environmental clearance law. In case the decision is to do an EIA, which is an environmental impact assessment, a thorough impact assessment of a project or an activity law, then the proponent draws up a terms of reference to conduct the EIA study, and with NEC we endorse, we unanimously agree and endorse the TOR, after which the applicant goes back and conducts this EIA study and submits the report to NECS. Once the report is submitted, then we go about making an assessment, and then same as before, we will go about what to decide on the issuance of environmental studies.
Yes. Srindoji sir, you are in the compliance monitoring division. So if you could highlight some of the, how do you monitor compliance to the environment clearance, and also if there is some types of monitoring.
Thank you. Let me begin by saying that compliance monitoring is an important component of environmental impact assessment once we issue environmental clearance. And fundamentally, the purpose of compliance monitoring is to evaluate, assess, and determine and ensure that the projects are carried out in an environmental sound manner and in compliance with the terms and conditions of the environmental clearance, and also in conformity with the applicable norms of the country. And then accordingly to take and impose necessary corrective mitigation and restorative measures to the non-complying projects. So when we talk about compliance monitoring, it's vis-a-vis an inspection of a project site, which usually involves going to a site, making visual inspections and spot checks. We also do compliance monitoring by interviewing employees of that particular project area, and we also take samples, environmental samples, air, water, and noise samples in presence of the holder of the environmental clearance. And then we also review and assess documents, relevant documents, which are kept at the site. So these are some of the inspections that we, these are some of the steps that we follow when we do compliance monitoring. And on the types of environmental monitoring in the field of environmental assessment, there are three types of monitoring. The first one, which I just mentioned, is compliance monitoring. As I said, which involves periodic sampling and continuous inspections of project sites to ensure that the projects are carried out in conformity with the environmental clearance terms and conditions. And the second one is baseline monitoring, which means measurement of environmental parameters and conditions such as ambient air quality, noise, and water during a pre-project scenario when the project has not commenced at all. That's called baseline monitoring. And the third one is called impact monitoring, which involves measurement of environmental parameters such as air quality, water, and noise, and etc. During construction and implementation of project, to basically to find out how these parameters have changed and altered during the construction and implementation stage. So basically, impact monitoring is to find out how a project has impacted the surrounding environment. That's called impact monitoring. So three types of monitoring.
So also, if you could highlight some of the major non-compliance observed and some of the actions being taken while monitoring.
although there is, we have a good number of projects which are in compliance with the EC terms and conditions, but let me be frank here that there are projects which are not able to fully comply with the EC terms and conditions. If I may cite some generic examples, generic non-compliance issue depending on the nature of project. First, in the case of mining activity, although the mines are required to operate as per the mine plan, but there are mines which are not able to operate as per the mine plan. For instance, the mines are required to have proper drainage along the roadside and exhausted benches at all times. And for that matter, the mines are required to have check dams to arrest excavated mucks at all times, and also the mines are required to adequately suppress dust. But there are mines which are not really able to fulfill all these terms and conditions, and likewise in the case of industrial sector, there are industries which operate. Which of course they do have pollution control devices, but they they regularly have this mechanical problems in their pollution control devices, or for that matter the pollution control device installed itself isn't efficient enough, as a result of which it causes air pollution. And in the case of road construction, the generic issues are, I'm sure you all must have observed that indiscriminate dumping and rolling of excavated mucks over the hill. These are some of the generic non-compliance issues. So I was just citing some generic issues, but there are specific issues which are very specific to a particular project. And now, in the event of non-compliance being committed, how do we respond and how do we take actions? We do take actions, through a combination of legal and administrative procedures. First one, what we do is we impose penalty depending on the severity and magnitude of the offence. And second one is we issue order or notice to the applicant, asking the applicant to take necessary corrective, restorative and mitigation measures. And third one is we make the applicant pay compensation, if he has damaged a property or a surrounding environment, we make the applicant to pay adequate compensation. And if this offence is very severe, the option that we resort to is we revoke the environment clearance until such period the corrective measures are fully carried out. And finally, we once the application rises to us that he has taken corrective measures, we do subsequent monitoring and verifications to check whether he has satisfactorily carried out corrective measures or not. So these are some of the actions that we take.
Yes, okay. I think Environmental Assessment Act came into effect in 2000. Is it, if I'm not mistaken? If it's in 2000, how aware the general public with regard to Environmental Assessment Act?
Coming to awareness of this act, as I mentioned earlier, the act, as you have also mentioned right now, that the act came into force in 2002, and following that the regulation came in 2002. The act was in 2000 and the regulation in 2002. So I think that the act and the regulation are very much aware to the general public.
Yes.
Because talking to my senior officers in the office, following the enactment of act and the regulation, they have done a thorough consultation with the public.
Yes.
And I think they even went down to the Gyeok and Jongkok level to do the awareness programs. And still we are after 15 years of implementation, more than 15 years of implementation, we still continue to create awareness to the Jongkoks, to the general public through various mechanisms. Like when we go to different regions, Jongkoks, we even call the local leaders to participate in such awareness campaigns. In this way, I hope the act as well as the regulation is more or less aware to the public. And moreover, I think it's a continuous process, because when a person or anybody comes up with a developmental activity, and he has to follow a certain procedures lah. So one of these one is where like in Zonghaks we have in every Zonghaks we have Zonghak environment officers lah. So through them it is a continuous process, like they keep on creating awareness lah. And I hope the general are very much aware on the act and the regulation.
As you mentioned, the Zonghak, I believe there are Zonghak environment officers in each and every Zonghak. What are the main roles and responsibilities? Are they also carrying out such awareness within the Zonghaks?
Okay, thank you. When it comes to the roles and responsibilities of the Zonghak environment officers, I think they have a clear terms of reference issued by the Secretariat, National Environmental Commission, and one of the role is, as I mentioned, Zonghak is also one of the competent authority to issue environment clearance. So in that committee, the Zonghak environment officer act as a member secretary. So I think they play an important role in this committee to issue environment clearance, and moreover, because of the decentralization policy, most of the activities does not have to come to NEC for clearance. So we have delegated and to the competent authorities, which in one is Zonghak Environment Committee. So they have the role in issuing and assessing the environmental process in the Zonghak level. So I think they have an important role in the Zonghak.
Ma'am Singla, there are lots of complaints in getting environment clearance. I think you are very much aware of that. Most say that for timely completion of activities, whether farm road or highways, getting environment clearance on time has been difficult. So do you think that NEC should review the process to obtain environmental clearance? Yes.
I would like to say that I think it's time that everybody took responsibility.
Yes.
Especially on the issuance of environmental clearance and the time it takes to issue an environmental clearance. Like I've said before, when on the process, environmental clearance process itself, an applicant must submit a fully detailed application form. So they'll have to fill out that form to the best knowledge and extent they can. And also they'll have to attach stakeholder clearances along with it. So the time, what we found through experience is the time is lost when an applicant, when the reviewing officer reviews an application and finds that the information provided is inadequate. And also the time is spent when we are drafting a letter and awaiting additional information from this proponent. So we have instances where we have waited more than 1 year and 2 years. And there are also instances where stakeholder clearances are not issued on time. So not citing examples, but stakeholder clearances, if there is no stakeholder clearances, NEC will not be able to make an assessment of that project. So that is where the information that an applicant gives to NECS is very pivotal. So if the information is incomplete, we have no assessment to make. So because the information is incomplete and we have to ask the applicant to give us additional information, that is where the time is lost. And secondly, the application that NECS receives in a year is more than hundreds, in hundreds. And we have only 4 reviewing officers. And although we have a stipulated timeline in our regulation, so regulation, and we have, till date, we have issued a decision on environmental clearance within the stipulated time frame. And to go further and say, we have done more than, we have done well before the deadline also. So, so that is that.
Yes.
But coming back to your question, I feel that the process itself is very good. We have a good process in place. There is really no need to review the process.
Yes.
The environmental regulation itself is getting revised. So the process is made well stipulated clearer there, but there is no change in the way the process is. So that's.
And follow-up question. How about reviewing for having to pay a fee for construction houses in rural areas? Some of the basis for charging fees, if you could.
In our Act, in the Environmental Assessment Act, we have a clause that requires the applicant to bear the cost of administering the EA Act.
Yes.
So this is basically the fee covers the daily expenses, which is the TADA of the officials, and other expenses such as vehicle expenditures and normal office expenditures. So that one, that's the basis of coming up with the fee. The fees are not charged to make profit out of any application. It is basically, even if you look at the fee schedules itself, it is very nominal, nominal at this point.
Besides the environmental clearance, what other area does the Environmental Assessment Act cover?
The Environmental Assessment Act is basically, as I said, to safeguard our environment from developmental activities, to balance the developmental activity and conservation of environment. So it is basically the Act talks more on the environment clearance and assessment process. Besides environment clearance, it does not talk much on the other areas. But to elaborate on the environmental clearance and related things, we have by this Act the Commission Environmental Commission, NEC, and National Environment Commission, certain powers are given by this Act, and as well as to the Secretariat and competent authorities related to environment clearance. Similarly, the Act, as we all know, that mentions about the offences, what are the offences, then penalties for violation, and some other compensations for violation of the Act. And besides, basically the Act does not talk much more other than the environment clearance, basically on the environment clearance and assessment process.
What is the process for renewal of environmental clearance, and does every environmental clearance need to be renewed?
As my colleague said, the environmental clearance is issued for a certain validity period, and at the most, a maximum of 5 years, and it has to be renewed at least 1 to 2 months prior to its expiry. And compared to the application for fresh environmental clearance, the application for renewal is very simple. The applicant has to route the application through competent authority, relevant competent authority. If I may give an example, for industrial projects, the application for renewal has to be routed through Department of Industry. And for that matter, mining projects application has to be routed through Department of Geology and Mines. And if there are no relevant competent authorities, the applicant may directly lodge the application to the NEC Secretariat or relevant competent authority. And in terms of documents that need to be attached with the application for renewal of environmental clearance, the applicant has to submit a detailed compliance report. When we talk about detailed compliance report, the applicant has to specify what kind of measures he has taken to implement the EC terms and conditions. And once we receive the application for renewal of environmental clearance and compliance report, we make the applicant to pay renewal fees. As my colleague Sring said, we have a fee structure for renewal as well, and we levy a fee of 20% of the actual fee paid at the time of fresh EC, and plus Newton 500 application fee, flat fee. So once we once we get the application, and once after the applicant pays renewal fee, we then acknowledge and take necessary action on renewal, which involves going to site and seeing if, checking the compliance, and depending on the project's compliance to EC terms and conditions, we make a rational decision on renewal. And as an incentive, if you find the projects complying well, we renew EC for a longer period. And if you don't find compliance good, we renew EC for a shorter period. Basically, this is to keep those non-complying projects under our scanner for constant action and attention from our end. Now, coming to the projects which require renewal of environment clearance, there are two types of projects: one-time projects and ongoing projects. There are some one-time projects such as construction of road, construction of tourist restaurants, construction of transmission lines. After its constructions, the impacts are very minimal and either very minimal or negligible. So for this kind of projects, it doesn't require, these projects do not require renewal of environment clearance. However, on the contrary, there are projects, bigger projects which have significant impacts during operation and construction stage. For instance, industrial projects, mining projects, and hydropower projects. So this kind of projects, ongoing projects, require environment clearance, renewal of environment clearance until the project itself is decommissioned. Penalty.
Well, it was such an important topic for discussion. I hope our viewers learn a lot what exactly is environmental assessment and environment clearance. Thank you very much for joining us in this program once again. Thank you.